Welcome to this explainer. All right, I want you to picture this. It's March 1974. We are deep in the thick, totally unforgiving jungles of Lubang Island in the Philippines. World War II has been over for nearly 3 decades, right? The world has moved on, nations have rebuilt, and peace has pretty much spread across the globe. But hiding in the shadows of the jungle canopy is a man in a tattered, heavily patched-up uniform. His clothes are practically falling apart, but the rifle in his hands and the sword at his side, they are gleaming, polished to absolute perfection. This is Hiro Onoda, an intelligence officer of the Japanese Imperial Army, and he's still fighting a war that ended 29 years ago.
It's literally mind-boggling when you think about it. How on earth does someone survive 29 years totally disconnected from reality? While the rest of the world was entering the modern era, building entirely new cities and putting the old wars behind them, this solitary soldier was out there treating the jungle as an active combat zone against American forces. So we really have to ask, was this an unparalleled sense of duty, or had the sheer isolation completely warped his mind into delusion? To understand how a man could become the very last prisoner of a war long finished, we have to look at how his mind was built in the first place.
Section 1. A Vow of Absolute Loyalty. To really wrap our heads around Onoda's reality, we've got to rewind all the way back to 1922, the year he was born in a small Japanese village. Okay, let's dive into this. Onoda grew up in a society that was heavily defined by what we call imperial indoctrination. Back in this era, when a child took their first steps, they were essentially being taught not just how to walk, but how to die for their emperor. Childhood wasn't exactly about carefree play. It was about intense, strict discipline. And this brilliantly illustrates why the very concept of surrender was entirely erased from Onoda's vocabulary. In his world, loyalty meant treating a commander's order like a divine mandate from God. Surrender? It simply wasn't an option. It was a fate considered far worse than death itself.
So by 1944, with the war turning against Japan, Onoda gets selected for elite guerrilla training at the Nakano Military School. They taught him espionage, intelligence gathering, and how to survive completely alone to exhaust entire enemy armies. And his commander gave him instructions that were basically carved into his soul. Listen to this. You must not surrender under any circumstances. You are not allowed to commit suicide. Even if it takes 3 years or 5 years, we will return. Do not let the enemy sleep. Those exact words planted a fire inside him that the pouring rain of the jungle wouldn't be able to put out for almost 3 decades.
Let's move to his actual deployment and see how this builds his reality. Onoda was sent to Lubang Island, which was a small but strategically vital landmass in the Philippines. His mission was brutally simple. Step 1, deploy to the dense jungle. Step 2, disrupt and destroy. Basically, make the jungle a living hell for the Allied forces by sabotaging their supply lines. And Step 3, await the return of the Imperial Army. Period. No matter if it took 5 years or 10, his explicit orders were to hold that island until his forces returned to retrieve him. Section 2. The 29-Year Jungle War. Now, Onoda was fully prepared for a long wait, but no one could have predicted what happened next. Let's look at how the world hit fast forward, while Onoda's reality remained completely frozen in time. Just a year after he arrived, we hit August 1945, and the world fundamentally changes. The nuclear age begins with the devastating atomic bombs dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, and Japan officially surrenders. Now, the Allied forces knew there were still guerrilla fighters hiding out, so they dropped thousands of leaflets from planes over Lubang Island, straight up announcing the war was over. But remember Onoda's elite intelligence training? It totally convinced him that the enemy was highly deceptive. So when he saw those leaflets, he instantly dismissed them as a clever trick, just a psychological weapon designed to lure him out. To him, the war was absolutely still raging. But as you can imagine, maintaining this illusion came at an agonizing psychological and physical cost. Initially, in 1945, Onoda wasn't alone. He actually had 3 comrades with him. But over the years, the crushing isolation took its toll. In 1949, his fellow soldier Akatsu just couldn't take it anymore and surrendered. Then, in 1954, Shimada was killed in a shootout with local police. And finally, in 1972, his last remaining companion, Kazuka, was killed. From that exact moment on, Hiro Onoda was entirely, utterly alone against the world. And yet, he still refused to break his commander's order. So how did he even stay alive? Well, survival meant living quite literally like ghosts. Think about it. For almost 30 years, Onoda had no roof over his head. The damp, bug-infested jungle floor was his bed. He survived by foraging for raw bananas and coconuts, occasionally sneaking into local farms to steal rice, and hunting cows when desperation really hit, drying the meat in the sun so it would last for months. He became a total phantom, just a shadow in the canopy, constantly evading the search parties that came looking for him.
Now, we have to talk about a really dark reality here. Over 30. That number represents the devastating human cost of Onoda's mission. Because he treated the local inhabitants and the police as enemy combatants, Onoda and his men killed over 30 people and injured more than 100 over those 29 years. The Philippine government desperately tried to stop this. I mean, they dropped newspapers from the sky, they dropped personal letters and family photographs, they even brought Onoda's own brother to the island to plead with him over a loudspeaker. But Onoda ignored all of it, convinced every single attempt was just an elaborate enemy conspiracy.
Section 3. Found by an adventurer. Entire military search parties and government task forces failed to find or convince him. But somehow, a 24-year-old civilian succeeded where armies failed.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is this young, eccentric Japanese adventurer named Norio Suzuki. He had 3 main goals in his life: see a panda, see a yeti, and find Hiro Onoda. I know, it sounds like a joke, but Suzuki wasn't a soldier. He was literally just a guy looking for a wild adventure. He traveled to the jungles of Labong, and incredibly, within just 4 days, he found the elusive ghost soldier that highly trained military units couldn't track down for decades.
So it's February 20th, 1974, and the two men finally stand face to face. Initially, Onoda raises his rifle, totally ready to fire, but Suzuki quickly shouts Onoda's name, telling him that the emperor and the people of Japan are worried about him. He explains that Japan is now this peaceful, prosperous nation. They sit down and talk, but Onoda remains totally steadfast. He tells the young adventurer that he simply cannot and will not yield his weapon without a direct, formal order from his commanding officer. Suzuki realizes right then and there, okay, bullets aren't going to end this war. Only a piece of paper can.
Section 4. The final surrender. Suzuki returns to Japan with photographs to prove Onoda is alive, which sets off an incredible chain of events.
The government now has to find the one man on Earth who can end this. They actually track down Major Taniguchi, the very commander who had given Onoda his orders way back in 1944. But Taniguchi isn't a soldier anymore. He's just peacefully making a living selling books. The government brings the bookseller out of retirement, puts him back in his old military uniform, and flies him out to Lubang Island. When Onoda sees his commander, he instantly snaps to attention and delivers a perfect salute. Major Taniguchi pulls out a piece of paper and reads the formal order. Japan has lost. Your mission is over. Hand over your sword and rifle. The 22-year-old soldier who entered that jungle was now 52. He finally handed over his meticulously kept weapons, and just like that, the 29-year chain of duty was broken.
But you know, the tragedy of Hiro Onoda didn't just end in the jungle. Onoda left a 1944 Japan that was fiercely militarized, totally driven by imperial expansion and absolute obedience. He returned as a national hero to a 1974 Japan he couldn't even recognize. It was now a modernized, technologically advanced society heavily influenced by Western culture. The shock of this massive transformation was entirely overwhelming for him. Unable to adjust to a country that frankly felt utterly alien, he left Japan just a year later to live a quiet life in Brazil.
However, he never forgot the island of Lubang. In 1996, Onoda actually traveled back to the very Philippine jungle where he had spent his youth, and he donated $10,000 to local scholarship funds. It was his way of expressing deep sorrow and trying to make amends, seeking to ease the pain of the local families he had unknowingly terrorized for decades while fighting his Phantom War. Hiro Onoda passed away in Tokyo in 2014 at the remarkable age of 91, which leaves us with a final, really profound question. Hiro Onoda survived the harshest of jungles. He outlasted his enemies, and he fulfilled his ultimate vow to never, ever surrender. But in managing to win his solitary war, did he ultimately lose to time? I mean, he sacrificed the best decades of his life, his youth, and his friends, to a loyalty that the rest of the world had long since abandoned. It's an incredible testament to the power of human endurance, but also to the terrifying strength of indoctrination. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and I hope this incredible story leaves you as